Okay, so hi. Welcome to Tara Institute and this second Monday night in March. My name is Alice and I'll be leading the next 4 Mondays in March unless things really change. Is there anyone who's new tonight? Okay, so welcome to you. Well done for coming out on this evening. Your only job is to be relaxed and maybe have a relaxed mind and listen and see what you think. Yeah. So I hope you've had a good week and a good weekend. I came back from Adelaide today. I spent the weekend at WOMAD, the music festival, World of Music, Arts and Dance. And it was wonderful, and we saw some very beautiful music, classical Indian music and music from Mali or from all over the world. And it's very, very important. Even though, we hear about renunciation doesn't mean, never doing things that you like. It's very, very important as ordinary human beings to do things that actually lift the mind, that make the mind joyful. So that was great. So before we really begin, a little bit of housekeeping, and I'm sure you're all sick of hearing about it and looking at it, but we do need to talk about how the virus is going to be managed at Tara Institute. It's still quite early days, so I think it's okay to have a cup of tea tonight and a piece of cake, but that might change. I know that churches around Australia are stopping even that. If you are feeling at all unwell, perhaps better to stay at home, because all of these Monday night sessions are on YouTube, so you can still partake, even in the comfort of your bed, super cozy with the cushions behind and a nice cup of tea, and watch it in comfort, and that's fine. Also, Damien, who is our acting director at the moment, reminded me also that people with maybe compromised immune system, think about also watching on YouTube rather than coming where there are lots of people. I'm diabetic, so I'm not supposed to be here, but we'll see how things go as it progresses. I mentioned last week there's a little bit of talk about doing retreat, and there was going to be a retreat in Bendigo with Lama Zopa Rinpoche, our spiritual director, worldwide spiritual director, and he did some observance and has said that it's better the retreat doesn't go ahead. So that's been cancelled. There are a lot of people coming from the States. Rinpoche lives in the States, and his entourage. It takes a lot of people to kind of make it happen. So that has been cancelled, and as a result of that, the Easter course, which is normally held every year here at Tara Institute, is going ahead at the moment. So we were talking about the benefits of doing, a long retreat. That it can be very helpful to kind of get off the escalator of life and spend some concentrated time studying, meditating, doing the practices, and even doing this 3 days at Easter is incredibly beneficial. And it's going to be taught by Geshe Losang, who is a Lama who is living here in the Tibetan tradition. So have a think about it. And if you're interested, to ring the office, because it is a wonderful few days. It used to start on Friday nights. I'm not sure if it still does, but it's Saturday, Sunday, and Monday morning. Okay. Also, today is a very special day because it's the day of miracles. And it comes at the end of 2 weeks of Losar, of Tibetan New Year, which is a time when doing meritorious or beneficial actions, positive actions, is increased. And so today, anything that we do that's very positive, the result of that is increased by 100 million. So if we do very, very focused meditation tonight, and if we're unbelievably thoughtful and kind to each other, and when we go home, nice to everyone at home, then this definitely will be creating the cause to become fully awakened. Okay. So the focus for these evenings is working with our minds when life gets bumpy, when problems arise, as they will, because that's the nature of human experience. And actually, this was the first teaching that the Buddha taught after he became enlightened. As human beings with a body and a mind, it's inevitable that we're, going to face problems. And what the Buddha demonstrated with his own life was how to face problems, how to face difficulty with equanimity and patience and kindness, and certainly wisdom, knowing what to do in any situation, and also courage and great determination. And Siddhartha, which was the Buddha's name before he became enlightened, he was a prince born into a royal family. And so before he became the Buddha, when he was a prince, he also had problems with his parents. And particularly his dad, who was very unhappy about Siddhartha's career choices. He was adamant that his son would follow in his footsteps and be a great worldly king when Prince Siddhartha wanted to follow the spiritual path. So his dad went to incredible lengths to shield Siddhartha from the reality of the world by keeping him kind of imprisoned in these incredible pleasure palaces. And during his life, there were lots and lots of people who were against him, against Siddhartha when he became the Buddha, including his cousin Devadatta, who was always on his case and even tried to kill him. And Siddhartha kept studying and working with his mind and developing his good qualities until he sat under the Bodhi tree. It wasn't just it happened like that, but the whole of his early life was spent studying with the greatest meditation masters of his time, and studying, meditating, doing spiritual practice, until he sat under the Bodhi tree and became awakened. And Geshe Doga was talking about what the enlightened state actually means a couple of weeks ago in study group. So the Tibetan words are Jangchup, and Jang means awakened, and Chup means realized, and they refer to the fact that the Buddha developed all the qualities and realizations such as perfect compassion and wisdom and patience and fortitude, and freed himself completely from all faults such as greed, ignorance and hatred. So there was just nothing negative in his mind. And from the Buddha's point of view, every being with a mind has the potential to do this, to become completely awakened. Everyone in this room has that potential, and the question should arise in our minds, well, do I think it's possible? Do I think this could happen? Could I, Alice, who is so lazy and watches so much telly and, who's so limited, could I actually become fully awake? And the Buddhist texts state that all negative mind states, such as anger and greed and jealousy and resentment and all the kind of sticky moods that make our mind so uncomfortable that they're not intrinsic to the mind. They are not kind of part of the mind. They're not in the nature of the mind. And it's possible to overcome them if we put in the effort. Because they're not part of the mind, they can be removed. So they're like clouds, that cover a pure sky. The nature of the sky is to be pure. And this is the whole point of following a spiritual path, whether it's Buddhist or Christian or Muslim or Jewish or Hindu or whatever. The point is to overcome negative mind states that cause problems and increase positive qualities such as love and compassion and patience and so on. And to be happy, to be really, really happy and joyful and peaceful. And to know that our core values, what's most important for us, are there to guide us, and that they are the true source of happiness. This is what Buddhism is suggesting. And as Tenzin Palmo, the English nun in the Tibetan tradition, who I quoted last week, as she said, "A day is well lived if we can use it to bring some happiness and comfort to those around us, and if we carry out our work in the world with awareness and kindness rather than confusion and gloom. The Dharma points the way, but we ourselves must walk the path." Because it's said that the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, all the awakened beings, if they could enlighten us and make us perfectly happy, if they could kind of drop it into our minds, they would. But all they can do is to actually reveal the path and encourage us on the way. So let's do some meditation together. And we're going to, again, do the foundation practice of meditating on the breath. So this is where we focus on the coming and going of the breath to allow our bodies and minds to settle and relax. So it's very important that you're comfortable. So if you're really not comfortable on the floor, then better to sit on a chair, because if you have a lot of pain, focusing on pain isn't going to quieten your mind. So we sit in a posture that actually reflects what we're doing with our mind. So mainly that's to have a straight spine and shoulders even, for the body to be even and upright as much as possible. And we can have the hands, the right palm and the left of the thumbs touching. This is what we do in our tradition, or hands on your knees, however you are most comfortable. And we can close our eyes in order not to be distracted by visual things. Maybe take 3 deep breaths to settle into what we're doing. So we breathe down into the belly, allow the belly to expand, and then breathing up through the diaphragm and the chest, then releasing the breath completely. And we try to cultivate a meaningful reason for meditating tonight. So we're trying to let a very positive motivation arise. So we question, what is it I really hope to gain from this meditation? Maybe it's to heal deep-seated pain. It might be, I'm going to meditate in order to overcome anxiety, to become more peaceful, to become calm, to be able to relax better. And then we remember to include others in our intention so that it's not only for me, 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 but may I become more peaceful and wise and healthy in order to really be present for all the beings in my life, whether they're close or distant. And the most far-reaching motivation is that we can meditate in order that it might become a cause to eventually be fully awakened, whatever that means in your tradition, but fully awakened, fully compassionate, so that we can really help other beings every second of the day, just by being alive. And remembering that one of the most important things in having the mind settle, in becoming more concentrated, is relaxing. We really, really need to learn how to relax completely. So we've brought the mind inside, put aside the distractions of the day, and we feel the body sitting here right now. And right now, everything is completely okay. So we can relax. Then we do a quick scan, starting from the top of the head, going down. Just getting a sense of what's happening whilst we sit here, feeling the posture. And we intentionally relax the neck, the shoulders, the arms, soften your hands. Relax the chest and the belly and the hips and the legs. Relax the feet. We feel the whole body, feeling all through the body with our awareness. And we relax and we calm the body. And bringing our attention to the face, we make sure there's no tension here from concentrating. So really softening the brow and all the muscles around the eyes. And we relax the jaw, all the muscles around the mouth. Keeping the chest relaxed whilst allowing it to be open. And just checking all through. We check if there's any holding on to tension and we let it go. Release. And the Buddha said, ever mindful one breathes in, ever mindful one breathes out, staying relaxed and open. So we're paying attention to our breathing from the beginning of the breath as we breathe in to where the breathing turns, and then all the way through the out-breath. The feeling of the breath, this is what we're focusing on. Ever mindful one breathes in, ever mindful one breathes out. So we're keeping it that simple and relaxed. Breathing in, I know I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I know I'm breathing out. And when thoughts arise to distract you, as they will, because that's what minds do, you merely note it, let it go, and bring your mind back to the breath. Breathing in, breathing out. And whilst we're not trying to force the breath in any way, we are trying to pay attention to the feeling of the breath. Wherever you feel it, at the edge of your nostrils, or at the rise and fall of your belly, it's simply to be aware, to be mindful. Ever mindful, one breathes in. Ever mindful, one breathes out. And we're relaxing the mind, opening to the natural process of breathing. Has your mind wandered away into thinking? Just bring it right back to the coming and going of the breath. Breathing in, I know I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I know I'm breathing out. Just focusing on the feeling of the breath as it enters the nostrils and leaves the nostrils. Or maybe you're feeling a bit sleepy. Then we might think that this is a relaxed state of mind, but it's not. That's just sleepiness. So we maybe adjust the posture, sit a little bit more upright, breathe more deeply. And the Buddha said, one trains thus, I shall breathe in, calming the body. Breathing out, I shall calm the body. Breathing in, calming the body. Breathing out, calming the body. So we set that gentle intention. Or making it more simple. Breathing in, calming. Breathing out, calming. Calm the body, calm the breath. calm the mind. Just for a few more moments, bring your mind clearly to your breath. Fully aware, focused like a beam of light, breathing in, breathing out. And now we can bring this short meditation to an end. So just check up, see if there is any difference in the way that you feel. You might feel more calm or you might feel more agitated. You can never tell. So bring the mind back to the room. And it doesn't actually matter if through the meditation you feel agitated. One day you're going to feel peaceful, the next day not so peaceful. But the important thing is turning up every day. So actually next week I might talk about the 5 obstacles to meditation, and agitation is one of those obstacles. So the main ones are mental agitation through thinking too much. You know, you think you're meditating and then your mind's somewhere else. Did it? Yes, it's very common. It's really common. You might think, I'm a bit hungry, and all of a sudden your mind's in the fridge looking at Tim Tams, because the mind is so used to thinking. So whatever comes up, the thing is just to see it, not be judgmental about it, but in a friendly way, then just bring the mind back to the breath. And the other main obstacle that Geshe-Doga talks about is mental sinking or sleepiness. And you might think that it's kind of a good thing that, you're relaxing and then you go into that kind of pleasant, dreamy state. But it's said this too is an obstacle, because what we're looking for is certainly deep relaxation, but also mental acuity. So a very alert and concentrated state of mind. And if you let yourself slip into or drift into that sleepy state too much, it's said to actually increase the mind of ignorance. So in the monasteries, when the little monks, you see them kind of nearly toppling over, and then the older monks will come and give them a poke to wake them up. So tonight I'd like to examine how we might work with our own minds when we experience people we find difficult. And that can include the people we love most in the world, can't it? Because, who has never had a disagreement with their partner or parents or children? And of course, we can learn the techniques of skillful communication. I think it should be taught at school, really, but there are many courses available out there in the workplace, universities and TAFEs, and our global organisation, the FPMT, have a workshop on offering service at our centres. And communication skills, having critical or authentic conversations, are super important components of these trainings, because particularly people in the office, they can be the face, the first point of contact for people who are new coming in. So it's very, very important, and people can learn. We can learn how to listen properly and talk nicely to each other. But a very important element, and perhaps more important element, is developing the inner skills of calming our nervous system and lessening our reactivity. Because when we need those inner skills most is when we have least access to them. Because even anticipating a difficult conversation, if you've got a meeting coming up that's maybe difficult, or you're seeing a family member who's a problem for you, whatever it is, the smart part of the brain goes offline, and instead the reactive part takes over. So you might learn great communication skills and you might know them, but you don't have very good access to them if you don't have a calm nervous system. So has anyone had the experience of, starting a conversation quite nicely and then something said to really push our buttons, and then all of a sudden, instantly nuclear garbage comes out? And then, after that, and the results are, people can be very hurt, and it sets up all sorts of difficult dynamics, and then a whole lot of resentment rumbles away in the mind, not just for days, but it can be for weeks or months or even years. I can still be pegging out the washing, and thoughts about my difficult mother-in-law will come up, from 20 years ago. So it's a kind of sticky, difficult conversations can be very sticky. But recently I was listening to a podcast called Friendly and Fearless from the Being Well website, which is I think it's run by Rick Hansen and his son Forrest Hansen. And this was a conversation with Daniel Ellenberg, who's a psychologist and researcher. They all are. And they were talking about developing our inner resources in order to stay calm during emotionally charged conversations, so that we can take care of our own feelings, our own needs, as at the same time as respecting the needs and the feelings of others. And this is completely congruent with the Buddhist bottom line of having a very clear intention to benefit every other being, to benefit others, to help others as much as possible, and at least do no harm. Because how is it that we mostly do harm? It's usually with our mouths, with the way we speak. And Daniel Ellenberg pointed out that ideally in our relationship with others we can be really kind and decent and compassionate, but also have very clear boundaries, to have some wisdom about what we're saying. Because sometimes people can be very kind, but they don't know how to stand up for themselves. I probably fit more in that category. And then there are people who are quite good at sticking up for themselves, but they're not very kind about how they do it. So what we're thinking about is how to stay connected with our own sense of decency and generosity and compassion, and a genuine wish, a genuine desire to foster connectedness with the other person. So to foster some genuine, meaningful communication, even in the middle of challenges and difficulties that can arise in relationships. But it's really hard. It's really hard, not easy. And to be able to do this, and His Holiness the Dalai Lama talks about this all the time, we need to recognize that this person who's coming towards me is another decent human being. Even if we're not experiencing them as very decent in that moment, it's very easy to slip over into negative judgment when we assume that if a person had a judgmental tone, or what we hear as a judgmental tone, which, may or may not be the case, that this person is mean or mean-spirited or ill-intentioned. when, you see people every day and you don't know what's going on in their lives. You don't know what their story is. And for me anyway, a bit because of my personal history, it's really easy to slip into feeling scared. Scared of being put down or dismissed or hurt in some way. And in the podcast, Ellenberg points out that fear is very natural. It's natural that there's underlying anxiety when we're going into a situation where there's some awareness or at least feeling of a kind of personal threat or potential threat. And actually during that conversation he was talking about how can we be fearless, and that's almost impossible, I think. But he said what really helped him was talking to a friend who said, well, maybe not fearless, but how about fearless? So with some kind of practice, maybe we can get to a point where that fear doesn't come up so strongly. And neuroscience tells us that one of the big challenges we face as human beings is that our brain doesn't necessarily know the difference between a social interaction and a physical danger to our survival. And so we conflate the two unconsciously and unknowingly. And as I understand it, and I could be wrong, the brain has the same response to someone who we perceive is going to give us a hard time and a tiger who's about to pounce. And sometimes I feel like there are tigers everywhere. I've also read and listened to people saying that, this is a kind of a human thing, that when you see zebras on the plains and they're quietly grazing, just peacefully eating the savannah, and then when a predator comes, when a lion comes, they go into alert and run like mad, and then when the threat is gone, they settle down very quickly and just continue eating the grass. This is not something that humans do, that we tend to continue to be afraid and to be watching out. Anyway, His Holiness the Dalai Lama points out that this, according to the Buddhist teachings, is certainly not the whole picture. In Approaching the Buddhist Path, which is a book I highly recommend, it's a series of books that were written for Westerners coming to Buddhist teachings, so it explains things in a very clear way. And he's written it with Thupten Chodron, an American nun in the Tibetan tradition. It's a great book. It's called Approaching the Buddhist Path. I think there might be one in the bookshop. So he says, the vast majority of our physical and verbal actions are prompted by intentions in our minds, and these intentions are influenced by our feelings, emotions and views. Although many of our intentions are very subtle and seem more like primal urges than conceived plans, they are present nonetheless. So this is why intention behind action is so important. He goes on to say, the fact that our intentions and emotions are the forces behind what we say and do means that by changing them we can transform our actions and our lives. We're not doomed to a life circumscribed by the limitations of our genes, neural pathways and biological processes over which we have very little choice or control. We have human intelligence and the seeds of love, compassion, wisdom and other magnificent qualities inside us. These can be consciously developed. So when we do have a strong reaction to a difficult conversation, when we feel anxious, maybe heart beating, sweaty palms, shortness of breath, this is certainly a reaction to a threat. Ellenberg advises that we recognise it and step back. And even ask yourself at the time, is this really a survival situation? Is a tiger about to rip me to pieces? How can I calm myself and soothe the fear? And another thing is to remind ourselves of what we want the outcome to be. So this is connected with our intention before a conversation. Because sometimes we jump into conversations without being clear about what we want to happen. So we might remind ourselves, and it has to be kind of done quickly, but okay, I want this to really work out with my spouse or my child or my colleague or difficult aunt. And yes, I notice the spark of anger coming up, but then we practice, wait. Do I really want to go there? And there's a Tibetan saying, it says, when this is happening, when anger's arising, to go like a piece of wood. So turn into a block of wood. So we use restraint at that time by remembering what we want to achieve in this conversation and not to be pulled down, and he calls it into the underworld, by our darker impulses. So the idea is, rather than letting go to the impulse of criticizing and maybe yelling back, being harmful and hurtful with our speech, we create some space rather than having that immediate reaction. So the practice is to pause. So when we feel something growing in the chest or stomach, and usually you can, if you do take time, you can sense where you hold on to that tension, maybe jaw tightening. Instead of following that impulse, we pause, come into our bodies and breathe. And Geshe-Doga sometimes talks about, when he's teaching, he says when negative mind states come up for him, I'm not sure about that, but he says to himself, Geshe-Doga, be very, very careful. And I've actually found this incredibly helpful. So now, if my darling Dave has done or said something to annoy me, rather than leaping at him, I think, Alice, stop. Be very, very careful. This is not going to end well. So breathing is a critical piece of this. This is also why the breathing meditation is so important, because it's kind of practicing to sit with discomfort. How difficult thoughts can come up when we're sitting in meditation. We remember an argument that we had, or we remember an insult that we perceived during the meditation. So in a way it's a practice of recognizing it for the moment, letting it go, bringing the mind back to the breath. So what the teachers are suggesting is that we can do this, bring this kind of restraint and ability to restrain our impulses into daily life. But starting on the cushion is a very good point. So breathing is a critical piece of this. So if you can step back and breathe and remind yourself it's okay. Actually, it's okay. Calm down. It's okay. Just as you might comfort someone else in a pressured, difficult, stressful situation. It's okay. It's another human being. It's just another human being who wants happiness just like me. And recognizing the humanity in another person, whatever they mean to us, is an expression of love. And from the Buddha's point of view, the precise meaning of love is the wish for the other person to be happy. And compassion is the sincere wish for the other person not to suffer. And it's a very practical way of looking at things, because if you have love for another human being, that is, wanting that person to be happy, usually people who are being difficult, who are causing trouble, are not happy. There's something going on. So if you wish them happiness, this is very, very realistic. And to wish them not to suffer is realistic. And it's easy to love when everything is going well, isn't it? But how do we love in the face of provocation? How do you find that love when a child is being incredibly challenging? How do we bring a deliberateness or intentionality to that love? And it's suggested that this very deliberate love that sees a human being as being just the same as me in wanting happiness, not wanting to suffer, being very deliberate with it. This is kind of twice loving, because first it's love, wanting the happiness, and second, it's loving to will love in the face of provocation, and actually that love is a volitional act, so you're kind of working at it. So an element that makes responding kindly to difficult people difficult is that we exaggerate the positive qualities of the people that we like. So this is an explanation of what attachment means. And with the people that we don't like, the people that we label maybe as enemy, we actually exaggerate their negative qualities. And the people that we don't know kind of are not even in our radar. We don't even really care about them. This is something that's talked a lot about in the teachings, is our tendency to divide people into these three camps. The people we're attached to, the people we don't like, and the people that we don't know. And when we think that the aim of any kind of spiritual practice is to cultivate a universal loving kindness, so that we have loving kindness in the way that Jesus Christ had loving kindness, or His Holiness Dalai Lama has loving kindness, or Desmond Tutu, where it doesn't matter who comes in front of them, they have the same wish for them not to suffer. Before we can cultivate that kind of loving kindness, we need to at least have some equanimity, so be more even in the way that we're perceiving other people, other human beings, to not be so judgmental. So we're going to finish with a meditation that helps us to do that. So if you sit again in a comfortable position, very briefly scanning down through your body again, consciously relaxing, bringing your mind to the breath for a few moments. And now gently turn your full affectionate attention to yourself, holding yourself close and dear in the same way that you would hold a very dear and close friend if they were here. So see if you can send warmth to yourself. Acknowledge that most of the time you do your best. We all try. And rejoice in your achievements. Bring to mind what you do well in the world. And be kind and forgiving about your shortcomings and failures, whatever they may be. And do this in a loving and kind way. And next bring to mind a friend and hold their image in your mind's eye as vividly as you can. So someone who you feel very warmly towards. So remember and rejoice in their good qualities, and maybe think for a moment about how they enrich your life, what they do in your life that feels wonderful. And see how you're actually willing to overlook their failings. That you are willing to forgive them when they make mistakes. So feel the warm feelings their image brings up. And send them your love, your care, and your wish that they receive every possible blessing. Really, really feel for them. May you be well and happy. May you flourish. May you be free from anxiety. May all good things come. And now let the image of the friend go and bring to mind the memory image of a neutral person. Someone you pass on the street or maybe walk past at work who you don't know but you recognise. Or maybe someone at your local milk bar. And remind yourself that this person, like you, wants to be happy and not to suffer. No different. This person has friends and loved ones and dreams and plans. And they too are prone to fear and worry and the pressures of life that affect you. And if somehow you met this person properly, you'd see all these different aspects of their life. And on the basis of this reflection, generate feelings of warmth and kindness towards them. May you be well and happy. And now let go of the neutral person and bring to mind the memory image of a difficult person in your life. But it's wise not to start with your most difficult person. It may take quite a bit of time and patient practice before you can work with them. But make it someone who's just slightly difficult or maybe a bit irritating. And hold their image in your mind. And see if you can feel any resistance, any unwillingness to hold them this way. And then take a moment to generate different thoughts about them. I only experience the deluded and difficult aspects of this person at the moment. And it's a narrow view. Things could change so easily. Enemies become friends, friends become enemies. This person is just like me in their fundamental yearning to be happy and not to suffer. And maybe if this person were happier, I wouldn't experience them as the enemy. They have their own sadness and their own difficulties that maybe I don't fully understand. And after all, what's really making me suffer in relation to this person is the harshness of my own resentment. How wonderful it will be to recognize their humanity and let go of resentment and anger and make peace. So see if you can generate any feelings of warmth and kindness towards this person. Is it possible to think, I wish you could be happy? And notice if that's kind of difficult to wish them well, or if there was actually even a slight shift in your resistance to them. And to finish, we cultivate a more general wish that all beings in the world find a way to let go of their habitual judging, critical minds and find relief from their sorrows and grief and suffering and cultivate love and compassion. And may I become part of the solution. And we try and take this spirit of equanimity very deliberately into the world tomorrow. And on this day of miracles, we can dedicate all of the positive energy that's arisen tonight from our willingness and effort to work with our minds to become more skillful, more peaceful, happier. May it contribute to the peace of the world. When you're ready, you can relax. So, does anyone have a question? So if you Google Rick Hansen, you'll find it, but it's Friendly and Being Well, the Being Well podcast. It's really good. Friendly and Fearless was the name of that podcast, and it was number 3, episode 83. But they have lots of podcasts and a lot on neuroplasticity. It's very interesting and very helpful. Yeah. Friendly and Fearless was the name of that podcast. It was number 83, and it's the Being Well website. Yeah. It's really good to listen to before you go to sleep. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So if you feel happy to do so, please stay for a cup of tea. I notice there is cake tonight. And thank you so much for coming, and maybe see you next week. Have a lovely week. Be happy.